There have been a lot more reports coming out of Lyft randomly deactivating drivers for almost no reason, where if there's a dispute, for whatever reason, Lyft seems to take the stance of guilty until proven innocent when it comes to drivers. And this story I'm about to show you is just another example of that. So I'm on Reddit right now. As you can see, this person had a minor get in their car and they did not have a parent or a guardian with them, so they refused to do the drive. And I think smart move on their part, right? You can see right here, they were kind of messaging the person saying your child is 9 years old per Lyft terms and conditions. Because the minor or because the child did not have a parent or guardian with them, they refused to do the drive. I think that was a smart move on the driver's part, right? I mean, it's a 9-year-old getting into your car. I would have done the exact same thing. So they have this kind of conversation here, right here. And then on the next page, boom, your driver account is temporarily on hold. Alleged unsafe behavior. This is one of those situations, I think, especially when it comes to driving minors, that's kind of no matter what, you're always wrong. If you drive them, I mean, having a 9-year-old in your car looks very suspicious, but also if you don't drive them, you have situations like this happening. Now, this is one comment I do want to highlight that I saw that I think is very interesting and says a lot. I've canceled dozens of trips due to unaccompanied minors. It's really pathetic that Lyft sides with trash parents. I mean, this is true not just for minors, kind of being in the vehicle on their own, but any situation where it's a dispute between the passenger and the driver. And this is a big thing. Lyft is much worse than Uber. Uber would never pull us out like this. Uber is far from perfect, but they are not as terrible as Lyft. I work for both. You can't even speak with someone with Lyft. It's only script readers via text. They are mostly brain dead. There was this comment of someone saying people like this should be charged $100 a day every day Lyft has your account temporarily on hold. I don't know if I fully agree with that, but I do agree that Lyft should reimburse you if they do put your account on hold. I will talk about that in a second. Now, this is the original poster responding to that. That would be nice. Fortunately, it was only about 30 to 45 minutes, and then it was reactivated. Now, luckily, everything turned out okay. They got their account reinstated in only about half an hour to 45 minutes, which is good. But this brings up, I think, a lot of very interesting points because I have heard from a lot of drivers that deactivation is now becoming more and more a thing. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't know why. I feel like, maybe it's just statistics that if you think about it, like the more drivers on the road, the more incidents are going to happen. Same thing with deactivations, but it is, I think, a very important point to make, as one of the commenters pointed out, that Uber is way better than Lyft about this. I feel like if you look at Uber versus Lyft, as I've talked about in so many videos, especially recently with the new CEO, David Reisher, I think he's been doing an amazing job. But this is one thing that I have noticed that with a lot of drivers, when deactivation comes up, I might even say almost 100% of the time, and maybe not 100, maybe like 90% of the time. So still a lot. Usually they're referring to Lyft, not Uber. And like I said in the beginning of this video, it is very unfortunate that for a lot of drivers, it's always guilty until proven innocent. Now, on one end, I kind of get where Lyft is coming from. If I have to look at both sides, I think it's always important to. On one end, maybe Lyft says, okay, if a driver is really bad, and of course, there are a lot of bad drivers out there. No question there. If a driver is really bad, I think Lyft says, shoot, we should not have them do another incident again. For example, in this case, like say there was some really unsafe behavior that this driver was doing when it comes to a minor being in their vehicle and they were being creepy or weird or whatever. Lyft says, okay, we're just going to deactivate their account. We can't risk, like say, putting another person in their car and like say they repeat that same behavior. Like say someone is, there's a bunch of instances. If someone's being violent, if someone's trying to sexually assault somebody, of course, you do not want another rider in their vehicle, and that could be really, really bad for Lyft, right? So on one end, I kind of understand from a certain perspective, if I have to look at both sides, Lyft saying, okay, we can't have another rider in their car in case this is true. Why would we want to have them repeat or potentially be able to repeat the same behavior? On the other end, though, this really affects drivers because from Lyft's perspective, like I said, they always favor the passenger more than the driver. And I think this is my guess as to why, again, going along with that, looking at both sides, is typically when a passenger takes a Lyft, they take the Lyft, they get out, that's it. They might take a Lyft maybe a few hours later, a few days later, maybe even a week later, but it's very sporadic for most riders when they're going to take that Lyft, or let's say even in this case, in Uber as well. When it comes to drivers, though, you might do 20, 30, 40, 50 rides or whatever. Maybe not 50, but you might do a handful of rides or a good amount of rides nonstop. So it makes sense that for a driver, if they're, let's say, doing something very offensive or, let's say, violent, or inappropriate, whatever it is, a driver does have the opportunity to repeat that same behavior a lot quicker and faster than a passenger typically would, just given the situation of how passengers typically take a Lyft and Uber, and how drivers typically drive for Lyft and Uber. That being said, though, and this is very important, it is so unfortunate, though, how Lyft, and especially Lyft, more than Uber, says, you know what, we don't know if this driver is right or wrong, we're just going to deactivate their account. And that is super, super messed up. There was a video I did a bit ago, I think it was in Chicago, I can't remember where it was, where there was actually an idea being put forth that if Lyft or Uber deactivates your account and they realize, oh, you know what, we actually were wrong. You did nothing wrong. The passenger just complained, or they were trying to get revenge, they were making it up or whatever, you actually now have to get reimbursed from that time you lost. I think that should get put into place because that would protect a lot more drivers. Now, like I said, in this case, it was only half an hour to 45 minutes. However, I've heard of some drivers being deactivated for 2 weeks even. And they're like, look, I did nothing wrong. It was a dispute with a passenger who was drunk. And now all of a sudden, I'm now being affected by this. I've heard of some drivers saying, yeah, this person was trying to drink in my car when I was driving. And I told them, hey, you got to pour out that beer or throw it away. You can't drink in my vehicle. And the person being drunk, trying to get revenge or whatever, reported them and they got deactivated for a week. Yes, Lyft did reactivate their account, which as they should, but now it's like, great, they lost a week's worth of work. And especially because most drivers now are classified as independent contractors, this is a real fear because as you can imagine, let's say you're doing everything right. You've gotten 5-star ratings. I've gotten comments like this. I've gotten so many comments on this channel of some drivers saying, yeah, I've been driving for 3 years, mostly 5-star ratings, very rarely anything under that. One passenger complained, now I can't drive for 5 days. I'm now losing out on that income and I drive full time and now I can't drive for 5 days. That's a huge hit to me, right? And I think it becomes this fear, and I've had some people comment this as well. It becomes this odd fear and this little anxiety in the back of your head that every single morning, like say you wake up, like say you do the morning commutes, you wake up, you go to turn on that app, it is a real legitimate possibility that just with people being people, right? That like say if someone complains, like I said, they're trying to get revenge, they're just complaining about you, whatever, then you pull up the app and Lyft says, hey, sorry, your account has been put on hold, like in this situation, we'll get back to you. And now you're like, what? I have to make ends meet. I have to put food on the table. I have bills I have to pay, like, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's what makes deactivation so messed up, that it can happen at any time without warning. And like I said, because most drivers are independent contractors, you don't have a lot of say, and there's not a ton you can do, which makes this a horrible situation to be in. This is also why I suggest, I've talked about this in a couple other videos, if you have a dispute with a passenger, and I want to say for me personally, I only have really ever had a big dispute. It wasn't anything like a blow up, but like a decently big dispute with one passenger. Only one. It was, I hate to say it, your classic Karen. No matter what I said, she was lashing out at me, super, super rude and everything. And I was still like super respectful, super like, okay, just trying to be like nice and pretend like she wasn't yelling at me, which I wonder if that made her more mad because I was trying really hard to be respectful, right? And remember, she complained to Lyft about me, but what I suggest to a lot of people, always contact Lyft first. That's what I did. The second she got out of my car, I'm like, I'm gonna contact Lyft to get ahead of the game. That way, in case she does say anything or does whatever, which, by the way, she did, I guess, complain to me a lot. I guess she gave me a 1-star rating, said I was like the worst driver, my driving style was unprofessional, she basically tried to flip the script on me, saying I was doing all this stuff. And then when I contacted Lyft, I told them everything in detail. I was like, hey, just want to let you know. Lyft contacted me later saying, yeah, Mark, just want to let you know. Actually, she did complain about you. She had to give you 1 star. I'm glad you told us about this first. And I just want to let you know that, no issue on your account whatsoever. We've seen that you've gotten pretty much 5-star ratings the entire time. We appreciate you letting us know about the situation. Still kind of a ridiculous ride, but I know this is not uncommon for a lot of Lyft drivers and Uber drivers too. It's kind of a roll of the dice. Most people, I'd say 99% of people getting into your vehicle are going to be super nice, sincere. But you do get this 1%, maybe even 5%, I don't know, that for whatever reason, if there's an odd dispute, the passenger just goes on to Lyft or Uber and they can just complain about you. They don't really get any repercussions for making up this story or, saying you allegedly did this thing or that thing or whatever. You're the one that gets penalized. They're just like, they probably forgot about it, like say if they're drunk or whatever. And now you're the one that gets your account deactivated. You can't work. You're just sitting there waiting, being like, okay, Is it going to take 30 minutes like this person, which good for them? I'm glad it got reactivated very quick. Or is it going to take a week or 2 weeks, which for some drivers, I have heard that was the case. I mean, that is an insane amount of time. That's half a month of work you're missing because one person decided to be that guy or that girl. You know, it's unfortunate. And honestly, like, I don't know the exact best solution because, like I said, I think it's always important to look at both sides. That's what I always try to do in every one of my videos because, like I said, on one end, it is super messed up to drivers. This should not be happening. And I think they should be compensated, you know, in some way. Maybe not like what that person said, that the person complaining gets charged for it, but in some way, Lyft says, hey, sorry, we deactivated your account for a day. We were wrong. We're gonna give you $100. At least something. But on the other end, I do understand Lyft's perspective that let's say someone does drive. Typically, most drivers will drive ride after ride after ride. You know, they kind of overlap in a sense. I mean, if there is a report of someone being inappropriate, violent, making sexual advances, you know, et cetera, obviously it would be messed up. If Lyft said, yeah, you know what, continue driving, you're fine. So I do understand Lyft's perspective saying, hey, if a driver is, like, say, doing something really, really messed up, you know, again, for lack of a better phrase, we want to stop them right there because we know they can do another ride in 2 seconds right after that. And we don't want to have the same repeat behavior happening over and over again. But it is a tricky thing. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know the best solution, but this is something that's becoming more and more apparent. I've heard this from a lot of drivers, and it does seem like that when it comes to Lyft, with all these stories I'm hearing about, they say, you know what, we're gonna deactivate you first, ask questions later. We're gonna just say you're guilty right away, you can't make money, you can't drive, and then maybe we'll figure out if you're innocent or not. This is why I do suggest as well, as like a mini pro tip to a lot of drivers, sign up with both apps. I say this all the time too, because I mean, hey, that's the best way to get the best bonuses. You never know, on a Friday night, Uber might pay more than Lyft and vice versa, but also too, and more especially, if let's say it is a Friday night, surges are high, and Lyft, for whatever reason, deactivates your account because some drunk person complained about you, even though you did nothing wrong, you could say, hey, kind of unfortunate. Hopefully I can get my case figured out. And like I said too, make sure you contact Lyft hopefully before they do. But you know what? I'm just gonna go to Uber now and drive for Uber. For right now, I think that's kind of the best option, to have kind of both on your phone. But hopefully this is an issue that does get figured out, because based off my experience of all the comments I read on this channel, seeing reports online, the whole Lyft deactivation issue is getting worse.